Shalom and welcome to Israel, the land of the Bible. We're at Mount Arbel, on the Arbel Cliff, overlooking the Sea of Galilee. We will begin our pilgrimage in the north, where Jesus took his disciples to the base of Mount Hermon, which you can see right in the distance there. And this is the region of Caesarea Philippi, which is a place which was built by Philip as his regional headquarters. Herod's the great son, Philip. And we will start here because this is where Jesus asked the all-important question of his disciples: who do people say that I, the Son of Man, am? And then he personalized this and he said to his disciples, and who do you say that I am? And I believe this is an all-important question for us in the 21st century, the question of who is Jesus of Nazareth. We need to answer that question, each one of us, because without an understanding of who this man who claimed to be the Messiah, the Son of God, is, we will not have an opportunity to an understanding of what his teaching is. It's also from this area that Jesus began to speak about his sufferings, the sufferings that he was to endure in Jerusalem at the hands of the religious leaders, that he was to suffer and die and rise on the third day. So we want to invite you from this place overlooking the Sea of Galilee, the place where he did so much of his ministry, where he called his disciples, first disciples, to follow him. We want to invite you to follow us on a pilgrimage called the Pilgrimage of Suffering and Glory. We will cover 7 sites on the way up to Jerusalem as Jesus began to set his face resolutely to go to Jerusalem. We will start in the region of Caesarea Philippi and explain in that region what Jesus was saying about the cost of discipleship. We will then go to the Mount of Transfiguration, which again is in Hermon. It says that after 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John up a high mountain and was transfigured before them. And we believe this was Mount Hermon. And then we will cover, the third site will be the Galilee, in this region where he continued his ministry as he began to set his face towards Jerusalem. We will then follow the route he took from here in Capernaum to the Jezreel Valley, and where he then turned down to the Jordan River near Bet Shean, and he crossed the Jordan onto the east side of the Jordan, which is down on the Jordanian side now, which the pilgrim caravans of pilgrims going up for the feasts would have followed, and they would have been Jesus would have been part of that pilgrimage. And so we will follow that and then cross back at Jericho and up to Jerusalem. And we will look at 3 of the sites in Jerusalem: Mount of Olives, where Jesus spent much of his time ministering and explaining about the times in which we now find ourselves. And then we will go to the upper room and follow the road to the place of his crucifixion, death, and resurrection. And we'll end this pilgrimage on the road to Emmaus, the village outside Jerusalem, where the 2 travelers were traveling after the events of the crucifixion and the resurrection, and where Jesus came alongside them and explained why it was necessary for the Messiah first to suffer before he could enter his glory. And this whole theme of suffering and glory is one we find throughout the New Testament. We find this in Paul's writings, and we find it in the epistles of Peter as well, very profoundly, that this suffering must precede the glory and the glorification. But as we share in this journey, we also believe it's a journey of transformation, because as we ourselves are transformed, we experience now the privilege of sharing in the sufferings of Messiah so that we can share in his glory. And this is really the message we are trying to convey through this pilgrimage and video, is that as we embrace the cross, because as Jesus said up here in Caesarea Philippi, that if you would want to follow me as my disciple, you have to deny yourself, You have to take up your cross and follow me. And we want to unpack what that means for us as disciples in the 21st century, in a time of great turmoil in the world. And for people who are not believers, but who are also asking the question, where is God in all the suffering? We're hearing this in Israel right now after what happened on October the 7th. Where is God? Why did he allow this? And we believe that this pilgrimage we're about to embark on is going to help us to understand the mystery of suffering, but also how in the midst of suffering we experience the glory of God in a way which is quite unique, quite amazing, because it's in that suffering, embracing the sufferings of Messiah, that we also share in the divine life. And this is called the life of cruciformity, that we are conformed to the crucified Christ, and as we conform to his life, we share in the life of the risen Lord. We share in his resurrection life now. And this is a great privilege, a great blessing for us. So friends, I invite you to join us on this wonderful pilgrimage. I call it wonderful because although it's about suffering, it's about understanding the meaning and the purpose of suffering, especially as those who are followers of Yeshua, Yasu, Jesus of Nazareth, that as we follow him, we receive the empowerment to be witnesses in a time where witnessing to the Messiah, witnessing to Jesus of Nazareth is going to become more and more challenging all around the world. And we already know how many of our brothers and sisters are facing tremendous pain and suffering for their faith in countries all around us here. We are aware of the price being paid, and I think I want to end this brief introduction by saying I believe we have now reached, as believers, especially in the West, our Caesarea Philippi moment. We can no longer simply have a cheap grace, as Bonhoeffer spoke about, but it's a very costly grace that we've received. We can no longer ignore the call to radical discipleship. Well, I don't like to even call it radical discipleship because it's simply discipleship. This is normative discipleship in following after Jesus in his footsteps as we go up to Jerusalem. So welcome, come and join us as we start in the north, and we will follow the footsteps of Jesus up to Jerusalem, the place of his suffering and to the place of his glorification through his wonderful and glorious resurrection and ascension to the right hand of the Father, where he right now is praying for us, interceding for us, that we might have the strength to endure to the end. Shalom, and God bless you. Thank you.